Keep going. Come on, yeah, Ben.
Hey.
Corona, yeah. Come on, Ben, you got the moves. People were dying all over the world. Come on, Ben, keep going. You got the moves.
I can't hear the music now.
Oh, wait. I'll put it on. There you go. Show us some of those Kiwi moves, Ben. Come on. Divine intervention, they are crying every nation. It's only starvation and there's no solution. We gotta join our hands and win this battle. Together we'll run. Yeah, that's the one. And win. Together we'll run. Together we'll stand and conquer Corona. Corona. Oh, Ben, you're so funny. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
America.
Australia, Antarctica, we are one.
Zimbabwe, South Africa, Nigeria, China, America, Italy. Yeah, that's the one. We are one. Zimbabwe, South Africa, Nigeria, China, America, Italy. We are one. We are one. Corona. Where are you from? 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 Corona. Watch away.
Africa, Asia,
America.
Europe, Australia, Antarctica, we are one.
Well done, Ben.
Time to start the show. Time to start the show.
We are one. Hi, Precious. Hi, Ben.
Hi, Precious. Hi, Katana.
Yeah, well done, Ben. That's good.
Time to join the fray.
Well done.
Wow. Time to join the fray. My warm-up exercises. It's winter here.
Where were you, Mark?
I was asleep. I was sleeping.
Welcome to another day. Welcome to another day.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm late. I'm 5 minutes late. Yeah, 3 minutes late, really, or 5 minutes. Yeah. Yeah. I was sleeping. Sorry, I delayed last night. So yeah. I was waking in it. So I'm here now. Yeah.
Good.
So how are you doing, good people? How are you doing?
Going well, thank you. Going well, and yourself?
Yeah, I missed you the whole weekend. I missed you the whole week.
Uh-huh.
I couldn't wait to see you. So yeah.
Good to see you too. How's your study going, Mike?
Yeah, so far so good. Yeah, with the COVID-19, it's all online now. It's all online studying. Yeah, so it's a nightmare. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I'm coping. Yeah, I'm coping. I'm a strong person. Yeah, so yeah. Yeah.
How's your week been, Katana?
Yeah, Katina. Yeah, 10.
Fabulous. When you get lemons, you make lemon juice from that. You know what I mean, Ben?
Well,
I mean, I'm starting to get used to, all the crap, and like you get crap, you just make breadcrumbs from that. You make crumbs from it.
Was it a good lemon? Was it a good lemon drink? You turned the bad thing.
You just add a little bit of honey or sugar.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah. Great moves, by the way, Ben. I think I need to let your family know that Ben can dance. Do they see that, or you've got the door shut? Mark, how are you?
Oh, I'm okay. I'm happy I'm here. I'm okay. This is good. I love this platform. It's a blessing in disguise. I love it.
There's something be going on. Ben, you are covered. For some reason, we can't see you because I don't know. Yeah, that's much better, Grandpa. Sorry.
I had to change the height, otherwise you may have missed out on my dance routines.
Oh, I'll check it out. I'll check it out later. I'll make it later. I missed out. Yeah. Yes, sir.
All right. You know what? We just played some music today because we just wanted to just go easy, yeah, just to keep it like more relaxed because we're taking this COVID-19 too seriously. So Ben, here in New Zealand, we are just in Auckland. Is it lucky me? We are on lockdown again in Auckland here on level 3, and everyone else is still on level 2, which is not fair. What's happening, Ben? From 0 cases to 69 in like how many days? That's not, like I actually believe these cases have been hiding somewhere in the garages somewhere, and they can't just be emerging from out of nowhere. What's happening?
It's possible. So for those that don't remember or don't know, New Zealand shut down or locked up very tight back in March. And so we managed to, as it's called, stamp it out or eliminate it, the COVID. There's a number of cases. But because we started very early, we managed to stamp it out or eliminate it from New Zealand. As everywhere in the world, over half the deaths were in aged care rest homes. So the elderly, when they're in a rest home, on average, they have 2 to 3 underlying significant health conditions. So they're old and frail, and there may be dementia often as well. And so we know anyone that has an underlying health condition is, you haven't been dancing enough, Katina, warming up again.
Oh, man. I know. I just came from Iran, man. Like, that's why I'm still in my running gear. It's like, okay, keep going.
And so those that have 2 to 3 underlying health conditions, and they're often diabetes, for instance, and that can relate also to high blood pressure and or respiratory or pulmonary issues or cardiac issues or renal conditions. If you've got 2 or 3 of those, you're much more likely to die. Anyway, around the world, including New Zealand, the elderly, mainly 70s, 80s, 90-year-olds that also have those underlying conditions, that's where 90 to 95% of the deaths come from. In New Zealand, we managed to stamp it out, did lots of testing because we didn't have many cases when we decided to stamp it out. And as we know worldwide, there's a number of different approaches you can take. You can take the Swedish approach, where they're a very disciplined society. And so if the Prime Minister or the Minister of Health says, would everybody now please try and keep at least 2 meters apart? The Swedish people tend to be a very obedient people, and they tend to all, yes, of course, we'll keep 2 meters apart. Other countries, including New Zealand, are not quite so compliant as that, but that's part of that's why often these infectious diseases have a part of cultural to them. Some people say, no, we've got to keep dancing, or we still have to go to church, or we still have to do whatever else. And so depending on the particular culture you belong to, whether you can keep, for instance, social distancing, etc. or not, and at all ages makes a big difference. And anyway, New Zealand, Sweden essentially they wanted to get herd immunity, and there's been some differences of opinion on that, whether it's a right thing or a wrong thing within Sweden, but they are getting more herd immunity. They, like every other country in the world, including New Zealand, did not protect their elderly enough, and so they had a lot of deaths there. Then New Zealand, we aren't as compliant as the Swedes, but we decided to try and, for better or for worse, to try and eliminate it from New Zealand, which we did do. In the United States, of course, with Donald Trump as president, the country is very much a libertarian country, and their constitution and such like, and every person's got the right to carry arms or rifles and pistols and such like, and so they have a very high gun death rate as well. But also, when they're told, for instance, you have to stay at home, many of them won't. And when we have policies to try and eradicate a infectious disease, it only works if everybody does it. So if you're from a culture that does not wish to do...
Mark, are you frozen?
From where?
Oh, okay. No, I thought he was frozen.
Listening intently, but his eyes are open.
Wow. Okay, that's all right. Awesome. Okay, keep going, Ben. Sorry, I just thought for a moment maybe he had frozen and I didn't.
Okay, I should keep on moving.
No, it's all good. It's all good. It just shows I've never seen you so stable, so stable. Like, you know, in one position, you're always fidgeting or doing something or picking up something from somewhere or cleaning your ceiling.
Okay.
I see dust on your ceiling, Katina. I'm not sure. Anyway, so in United States, they've essentially let it run rampant going through the United States. And when that happens all at once, it completely crowds out the system. They may get over it sooner because it may sweep through and get the herd immunity, but there've been lots of deaths too. Australia is about halfway in between New Zealand and the States. Some of them are very libertarian. We're going to keep life going as it is. And they, in Victoria and Melbourne, the state of Victoria and Melbourne in Australia, they had a really, really large outbreak, and they've had hundreds of rest homes and thousands of cases. New Zealand is completely locked down, but probably like Africa, we've got quite a diaspora, as it's called. A lot of people overseas, about 600,000.
Where did you hear that word, Ben?
Because I heard it on an African conversation recently as well.
Diaspora.
but the Irish have a large diaspora as well. But New Zealand does too. New Zealand has a population of 5 million. And probably
is it 5 million now? I thought it was 4 million. Okay, I'm way
behind.
behind.
5 million now. When did you last read a newspaper? It must have been about 7 or 8 years ago, was it?
Oh, the last census. Yeah. Okay.
4 million. So we've just hit 5 million, and we have about 650,000 people overseas. New Zealanders overseas. We're very keen travellers. Many of them were on short-term working permits. And or when something like this happens, people tend to want to come home. And so either their working permit's finished or they want to come home anyway. So then New Zealand had the challenge. We had eliminated it after almost 6 weeks of total lockdown. People couldn't leave their houses and such like. We eliminated it from the country. Dare I say it, something even like HIV. If everyone's locked in at home, then you stop spreading. If people obey the rules, so to speak, if there's no sexual contact with others, then you stop any transmission of HIV. So a lot of infectious diseases can stop when there's a total lockdown, which is interesting.
Can I ask, Ben?
Of course.
On that note, has anyone checked to see what's happening in New Zealand? I mean, I can Google right now to see, because you know we've got we've got the highest STI rates, I think, in the Western or in the European. The last time I did like my research on that, the the highest. What's
In
happening?
New Zealand, just to clarify, you mean in New Zealand?
Yes, we're a very promiscuous nation, Ben, as it happens.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So has that come down because of COVID-19 restrictions, or is that gone up? Because I've got my own testimony on that. People have been sneaking out of their houses in the middle of the night. Did you know that?
I didn't need to know. I know that hormones and human nature are inextricably linked. They would have. It's the way of the world.
But, yeah, you can't do that to a New Zealander. Yeah, they'll find a way to get it somehow. Yeah, all right.
And so it's too early, I think, to see the statistics yet. The main STD in New Zealand is chlamydia, which is a type of bacteria, chlamydia, and it's generally painless. And women who have it 2 or 3 times, who have chlamydia infection 2 or 3 times, I can't remember the actual figure, but it's about an 80% chance that they will then be infertile and not be able to have children. It's quite high. And probably 2/3 of women, very roughly, would not have any symptoms at all if they had chlamydia. Whereas men, probably, I'm guessing a little bit at the moment, maybe 70% will have symptoms, but 30% will not have symptoms. Men, chlamydia.
That's dangerous. Yeah.
That's right. Men, chlamydia is generally urethral discharge, pus discharge, but no pain. Whereas Neisseria gonorrhea, only about 1 in 10 cases of chlamydia, there'd be about 1/10 is Neisseria gonorrhea, and that's meant to be like peeing barbed wire, very, very sore, very painful.
Okay, you know what, Ben?
Yes.
I think we're gonna need to talk about STIs at some point. You know why? Because I come from a country where people are embarrassed to even mention that they're having symptoms like those ones you're mentioning right now. So they would try by all means to just keep it to themselves. And at the end of the day, you'll realize that people start experiencing complications like being infertile, like you said, and then they bring it down to Ndaroi, I was bewitched or something like that. I was speaking my language now. But, but okay. Let's just carry on. I think I've just written down here STIs because that's those two STIs that you've mentioned there, they're the main ones. And I think we can link them with HIV symptoms and all the other stuff. But going back to COVID-19, I don't know if Mark had any questions, or you were still telling us about New Zealand. But Mark, did you have any questions? Yeah, Ben?
No, that makes sense. We'll keep the STIs for another one. So New Zealand, Australia, they got down to low numbers and relaxed. And it went away the COVID went away like a rocket. Absolutely took off. And so they've now had to close down everything a lot more to try and bring the rates down. In New Zealand, we went in fast and early to clamp it down, as they say, fast and early and thoroughly. And huge disruption to businesses, huge. Really hit the economy. Suddenly, all the restaurants, all the coffee shops, all the bars, alcohol, there was nothing. And central cities, absolutely nothing. Everybody had to stay at home, or they could go to the local supermarket only, then go home. But nobody wanted to go to the supermarket other than the first day to get lots of flour to bake goods and such like at home. And lots of social distancing, hand hygiene, everything else. Whatever the reason, we got rid of it. But then we have several 100,000 New Zealanders overseas, often from countries with high incidence of COVID-19, wanting to come home. And of course, they have a passport, they're entitled to come home. And initially they did come home and they had to self-isolate at home, but they didn't do it very well. They're more likely, for reasons that Katina's just mentioned, pop over the fence to check out the neighbour. And,
I did.
So then there were outbreaks from some of these people that came back from overseas. So now New Zealand has a system when anybody comes back from overseas, the government hired most of the hotels in New Zealand. And so whenever anybody comes back, they have to go into a hotel. And originally that was all, but still more people sneaked out of the hotel to pay the neighbors a visit.
Obviously, what do you think? Getting room service paid by the government, and then you think I'll just stay in a hotel with a remote control doing nothing?
That's right. Some need a little more. So they then they now turned it over to the military. And so there's fences put around the hotel, and there's permanent security guards, and the Air Force military as well to guard them. And still some people break out. They get pulled back in again, and they get heavy fines and such like. But having done that, we stopped all cases in New Zealand, and we didn't have any cases for 100 days, which was a long time. Then a family in Auckland, our biggest city, came down with it, and they very responsibly went and sought medical advice. They came down with flu-like symptoms, and then 2 days later it was realized it was COVID, and so all of their contacts everywhere were traced, and I think it is something like 70 cases now just from that
linked to them,
70 cases. And but the trouble is, New Zealand is facing is that they've all been quarantined. They've actually been taken into hotels and with armed guards.
Nice.
Not armed guards.
Imagine $250 per night paid for you.
They don't have to pay.
No, it's paid for you. But
yes,
you
paid
know
for
what?
you. So you're
No,
a flash hotel.
maybe it's a good thing.
Hotel, free internet. And I'm not sure if every channel's available, but free internet.
It is. No, there's every channel when you're in the, because they put them in the 5-star hotels most of the times, you know. So yeah.
And but, and it's a big but, they cannot link any of these COVID infections to anybody at the border. It was always thought the weak link would be the customs and or the bus drivers and or the air cabin crew that will be the weak link in isolates getting into New Zealand. But these isolates, COVID isolates, I think I mentioned the other week, they can be effectively fingerprinted. It's called the same genome. And none of the 69 match any of the other known cases in New Zealand.
Wow.
And they match a similar cases in Australia and similar cases in the United Kingdom, but none of those that have come to New Zealand. So now the thinking caps are on, where did it come from? Where did it come from? And one possibility only, it seems unlikely, but it is possible. Most microbes, most bugs, the colder you keep them on environmental surfaces or on food, the colder you keep them, the longer they live. Yeah. So if you freeze a chicken that's full of Campylobacter, if you freeze it very, very cold for 20 years, it'll still be there 20 years later. The colder you freeze them, the longer they live. So one of the people in this family worked at I think it's called Polar Cold or some such thing, but worked at a cool store for imported foods. And one possibility, it's only a possibility, is was it contaminated in the source country, shipped out frozen, and in the distribution, could it be possible that it'll be the first case in the world? If it is that, we don't know. Time will tell. Like all these things, we know more about COVID with time, and we'll know more about this outbreak with time.
Yeah.
I've talked lots and more.
Wow.
We're hopefully, so Auckland, they've taken the approach in New Zealand this time round, because the cases were only in Auckland and or associated near-ish towns. They've put Auckland, where Katina is, back onto level 3 lockdown. And she was not working in infection control in an essential industry, which she does, and goes out, and she's been there today, I happen to know. Plus, she's done her normal marathon run as well. If she hadn't done that, then
I'm allowed, ain't I? Level 3 doesn't mean you have to be depressed.
But I'm in the South Island of New Zealand in Christchurch, and we can carry on life almost as normal. Level 1.
No, Ben, I thought you were on level 2.
Are we level 2? I don't know what we're on. We just carry on as normal.
Check your phone. The rest of the country is on level 2. We are 3. So that, like, in case you guys get a case, you just go up to 3 as well.
Yeah, that's right.
Anyway, Mark, what's happening in the United Kingdom? That's us in New Zealand here. See, I'm having fun here on lockdown.
Yeah, but the Prime Minister is easing up the lockdown, restrictions. Is easing up the lockdown. Why? Because we are moving down. We are going. I think we're below level 1 now.
How can we be below level 1?
We're doing well. We're doing well. But unfortunately, what they've done, they've decided that every state, you call it every city. We call them cities. Every city, they have to be accountable for their cities. So the local MP, the member of parliament, and his board, they're in charge of saying if there are cases which goes up, they'll do it. They'll have a lockdown. Right now in Manchester, we're in a partial lockdown because our cases started rising up. They started going up in about 2 weeks ago. They had gone down, but they started going up. So the MP, the member of parliament, was told that he should act on this. So he talked with the mayor of Manchester and with the board, and they to do the lockdown in Manchester. So it's every city is given rights to do what's right for their city. It's a good thing though. So it's not like so what they've done, they'd opened up restaurants and pubs, to let people go in. But because of the lockdown, it's been enforced. They've to close down the pubs again and the restaurants until further notice. But it's reviewed every 2 weeks. So hopefully by next week it will be back to normal. So it's all like what you said, it depends with the culture, like what Ben said. It depends with the country, with the culture, with what you believe is right for you. So yeah, we are managing, but I've heard we might have another surge of the infections. So hopefully it won't go to that state where we have the surge and people start going back to where we were before, where everyone won't be going to work. Because right now the shops have opened, the retail shops, the clothing, and some of the barber shops are opening up, but not all of them. The dentists have opened up now, but not all of them. So it's a progress. We're working towards going back to normal, but it's not easy. So hopefully we'll get a cure. That's what I'm praying for, the cure for COVID-19. And Ketina, we need to send Ben to China.
Why?
And I want him to be our PI, private investigator.
I'll lose him.
Listen, but let me finish. We'll send him to private investigator, and you'll find out why China is got 0 cases.
Because they shot them dead.
Okay, fine. But I think, you might be right. Yeah, but what I'm thinking, they might have got the cure. The Chinese people, they might have got the cure, so they're keeping the cure to themselves. Yeah, I won't say much, but Ben will go and find out for us.
No, why don't you go? Huh?
I'll need someone to take notes for me. I would. No,
yes, Ben is old. Ben is old. He won't survive.
That's the good thing. They won't suspect him. They won't suspect him. They'll be knowing. They'll be saying, "Oh, he's just a visitor. He can't be. He can't be.
You can't say an old visitor."
He's not old. He's not old. He's young. He's not old.
No, Ben was the high risk ones. Is it not 65 and above? I'm not saying your age, but yeah.
I'm 65, and the.
Oh, you're saying your age. Sorry, Ben.
No, he's just a number. He's just a matter. Me, I don't believe in age. Yeah.
No. I walked up the hill the other day, about 100 meters, carrying an oven stove up because the old one blew up. And there's about a 48-year-old, I think he said he was, and he was completely puffing at the top. He said, "How old are you? You're not puffing at all." I said, 55. He said, "I can't believe it. How often do you go to the gym?" I said, "I've never been to the gym in my life."
But you
anyway,
you do tramping a lot, don't you?
I live on a hill, so everywhere you walk is either up a hill or down a hill. And today I walked I go down to the sea every day, but it's about 1,500 feet down to the sea, something like that, and back up again. So I keep fairly fit. Anyway, so partially it's cultural, as Mark says, for and I said before, for COVID outbreaks or reforming, but also it's partially what you can or cannot do. So if you live in Zimbabwe, it's probably, I'm guessing, impossible to seal off the borders. So you could never have an elimination policy. Whereas New Zealand is way out in the middle of the ocean, and it's seawater all the way around, and so it's a lot easier to at least consider an elimination policy. United Kingdom, it's very short barrier for people, boat people or others, to get across the channel. Then there's the philosophy behind it. Originally your current government then initially went to let it run through like the United States. Then Cambridge University came out with a model, mathematical model, saying that all the hospitals will be totally clogged and everything else. So they did Boris Johnson did an immediate U-turn, and went to do a lockdown. But the end result, and so that brought the numbers down a bit. But it's impracticable to impossible to imagine a country like Britain could eliminate it. And there are those, including in New Zealand, nobody would talk about it very much, but now we start raising the issue. Everyone used to think, not everyone, but politicians used to tell people that when the vaccine comes, we can then open the borders. But I think it's unrealistic to imagine there's going to be a safe, effective, long-acting, affordable vaccine coming in the next 1, 2, 3 years. And so at some stage, New Zealand is going to have to bite the bullet. And I believe personally that everyone in the world will have been exposed to COVID within 3 to 5 years. But remember, 95 out of 100 people will fully recover from COVID. And mainly only those across the general population, I should say, likely 997 out of 1,000 will recover from COVID, because it's probably only got about a 0.3% mortality rate, which is 3 per 1,000. But starting at over 63-year-olds going upwards, the mortality rate, the death rate starts increasing more and more and more. So 63 up, then 70 a whole lot more, then 80 a whole lot more, especially if they have an underlying significant health condition. So most people in the population that get it will have no symptoms at all. It's called asymptomatic, and they will likely get immunity from it. So Britain will be heading towards immunity, but if it gets too many to handle for the social services or the hospitals, then the individual mayor, as you say, Mark, starts putting some restrictions on. But often people will get frightened, and when there's more cases, they will start social distancing themselves too. Not the young so much. There's no tomorrow with the young. You only live for today. But as you get older, you have a better perspective of time. And the older people tend to be more cautious now, but they're also at more risk. And so China, that's an interesting one. Perhaps they are either, if I can say, economical with the truth and their figures. That's one part of it. And there's large parts of China no one's allowed to go near or go to. So that could be one component. Remembering they didn't have any cases for October, November, December. Then after it was pointed out that they did have cases, they finally admitted actually there were cases. So they can be a little bit slow with coming through with their statistics. On the other hand, they have very, very, very tight surveillance, including photo surveillance and tracking in China. Some of that may be political to try and find dissidents, but for whatever the reason, that same technology will be being used to track anyone with COVID or in regions that have it to make sure they don't move or they do what they're told. So some of it may either relate to economical with the truth on numbers and or having very effective tracking, tracing and isolation.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true. I had something behind just nagging me. I need to say it. It's about there's a lady at work. She recently gave birth, and she got the COVID-19 at the hospital. I think that's what they've been told. So what they've done, because the lady is still young, she's still got her parents. So what they've done, they've separated the baby. They've taken the baby to the grandparents, and the lady is living with his husband, separate from their baby, because they're scared that the baby might contract the COVID-19. But is that right? I don't know.
Okay, nobody can give a definitive answer. So in general, I would say the most precious thing in the world is your new baby. And if there's not, the chances will be very low. And part of that is because this virus, the COVID virus, attaches to these things called ACE2 receptor sites, which are on various ones of our respiratory tract cells. So upper respiratory tract, we have a thing called a receptor site, ACE2 receptor site for the virus to attach to in our cell, and also in our lung and also in our gut. When we're young, very young, we have much less ACE2 receptor sites. As we get older, we get more. And as we get these underlying health conditions, we get more again. So when you've got more receptor sites, you can have more virus. That's one potential component. The other, though, for whatever the reason, children, in terms of percentage, there may be several hundred in the United Kingdom that have had it, but in terms of percentage, a very low percentage get clinical symptoms with it. However, if your new babe, the most precious thing in the world, happened to be one of those really unlucky ones that caught it and got bad symptoms and or died, you'd feel guilty for the rest of your life and tragic, and think, if only I'd let it go to somewhere like the grandparents that had no COVID, I could have avoided that risk. So I think it's a very low risk, but it is a pragmatic solution to reduce that very low risk even more for the most precious thing in your life.
No, that's good then. I was just wondering, is that right? Because you're taking the baby from the mom, and the baby needs breast to be breastfed. I mean, so you'll be thinking, is that right? So if it's good, that's fine. I just wanted to say, I said to people at work, I'll ask Ben. He might give me a solid answer. So you've just done that to me. Thank you very much for explaining.
Sure, welcome. I would hope that the babe could still have expressed breast milk. I think the chances, I'd have to specifically read, and it may not be known, but I doubt that it's in breast milk itself. So the mother could still express breast milk, because it's really, really important for babe, for their immunity, for their future growth, to have breast milk. So even if for some reason, I don't think that is a case, that an infected mother was advised not to give her babe breast milk, hopefully there might be a breast milk donor somewhere from a newborn babe that could still feed the babe breast milk. So important.
Yeah. I think we've exhausted this topic. We've exhausted it, the COVID-19. Hopefully.
There's somebody asking here. Oh, sorry. There's somebody asking here. What happened to did you hear about the Madagascar cure?
No, not unless it's that one from the impassioned YouTube speaker, I heard. Is that a Madagascar cure?
No. There's one where they say just when COVID started, people were talking about Madagascar found a cure. There was no COVID-19 reported from Madagascar. So people were just saying, it was just some strange, but I don't know. The World Health Organization didn't welcome it like the way they would welcome when it's something that's coming from the European countries. So I guess being African and Madagascar being up in Africa, people think maybe we got dismissed because they don't often welcome any research that comes from that part of the world. So I don't know how far true, and is there, anyway. It's something that just popped up when Mark said you need to go to China to get the cure.
I don't think anyone that has the cure, if it's in Madagascar or China, you would save all, Madagascar at least, you'd save all your financial troubles for the next 50 years if you had a cure that was credible. And if somebody went out and said, here, take these pills, and you could show that you're curing, everyone would want to know what was in the pills, and you said, no, I'm going to go to the United States first and sell them for $100,000 each. And you wouldn't be able to provide enough of them. And so at a time of fear and that uncertainty drives fear, people come up with many, many conspiracy theories and hopes, and they clutch at straws. I think if there was any chance that the Madagascar cure, so-called cure, it may have worked, but I think if there's any foundation to it, it would have been tried elsewhere. It's just too big a risk not to try it.
Madagascar coronavirus cases, 13,886. Number of deaths, 171. Recovered, 12,603. They had some concoction that they came up with, and they say that's what's saving the nation, apparently. So how far true, we don't know, Ben. You can find out about that one and tell us next time. Huh?
I will, but you have to be careful of these figures for a number of reasons. Could you just repeat how many, about 12,000 cases, was it?
Okay, 13,000 and something cases. Hang on, let me just open it up again.
All right.
13,886 cases, 12,603 recovered, 171 deaths.
So 170, that's
90%. 90% recovery.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's more than 90%, though.
It's more than 90.
Yeah.
300 out of 12,000. That's that's 0.3%. Is that right? Which is
Ben, I have no idea.
It's going to depend also on the testing. If you only test those in hospital, the death rate will be higher. So it depends how thorough you are at testing in the community. Now, in the general ones in the community, most people will survive. So the more you test in the community, the bigger, it's called the denominator. If they'd tested twice as many in the community, they wouldn't have had 13,000 cases. They would have had 26,000 cases, but the same number of deaths. You generally know how many deaths you've had, but it is harder to know how many total cases you've had. And to that, for instance, I add all those that have no symptoms, the asymptomatic cases.
Yeah, there's a lady here called Violet. I think we answered this question before. She's just asking, do you get infected again when you've recovered from coronavirus? Yeah, I think you've answered it before, but you can.
Right. I'll just do it again. Thank you, Violet. There is no credible evidence that so far in the world, anybody has caught it again. Now, we have to bear in mind that the first cases in the world in humans started about October, November, December. The large numbers basically started at the beginning of the year. So we only have a sample of 7.5 months. And in 7.5 months, we know the immunity lasts at least 7.5 months. We don't know how much longer than that. And within 7.5 months, nobody has caught it twice. There was a paper or two from South Korea at one stage indicating that people had caught it again, and they've now come to the realization and said also that it was the science was not adequate and they didn't catch it again. What they were detecting in their testing was dead virus, and the person did not, or about 6 people, they did not have symptoms again of COVID. So no, so far you can't catch it again, but we have to keep revising that after a year, 2 years, 3 years, until the first cases may or may not happen again. We assume they will. Antibodies in primates, so monkeys and such like, when they have been deliberately infected with COVID, they start losing their antibodies immunity in the blood after about 6 months. They start losing it quite fast. However, antibodies are not the only things that give us immunity. And it may be, we just do not know yet, that we may lose antibodies but still retain some immunity from things called T cells and other such things. T for Trevor, T cells and other such things that can keep going. They're not so easily measured, but the ultimate measure is, does anyone catch it again? And so far, nobody has at 6 months. Thanks, Violet.
Oh, wow.
And Mark for the translation.
You need to try and read that, Ben. You need to try and read that.
Yeah.
Hi, Katina, Yukawara, Nicarona, Inodza Kaurora here.
That's it. You're done.
Oh, you even read it better than Mark. Mark speaks Shona like as if he's speaking another language.
Don't listen to Casey. Ben, the way you've spoken it is the way I used to go to when I was young. I used to go to Roman Catholic. I used to go to Roman Catholic Church, and we had a white priest, yeah. And the way you said it, that's how he used to say the Shona words, you know. Yeah. So you're good. Yeah, because he was good in Shona. So you're good in Shona as well. So yeah, well done.
Might improve.
We'll get you a job in Zimbabwe.
No, we're just waiting for Corona to settle down, and then I'm sending Ben to Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
You know, you want to be a lecturer at University of Zimbabwe, Ben. You want to go and teach them about all this stuff, right?
Yeah, you do.
That's sharing knowledge. Mm-hmm. We all do. We wouldn't be here. Mm-hmm.
That's nice.
So where to from here with Corona? Oh, man.
Yeah, so now, I was just thinking, what was I thinking? Yeah, because someone was asking me at work, saying, what was he saying? He said, does the coronavirus, the way it goes around, is it affected by the humid condition? You know, the sea level, the humid conditions of a planet.
That's a good question. Below 40% humidity, and the colder it is, the longer the virus lives in the environment. Nice. So if you get it down to frozen, it may well last a year or two or more. And the colder the air is, the less humidity there is in the air. So it's just something that happens when cold air carries less water than warm air. So in the tropics, it's warm, it's humid, it can carry more air. Incidentally, in the when aeroplanes were first invented, they could only fly in the that's a different thing again. Was it only fly in the air was heavier in the winter? I think it was. They could only fly in the winter. However,
okay,
and not in the summer because the air was lighter. But the warm air carries less, carries more moisture. And so we get more rain clouds. You don't get clouds so often in Antarctica or the Arctic. It's frozen and comes down. So yes, increase the humidity. What we do not know actually is how much the virus, there's a lot of emphasis placed on cleaning tables after people have sat on them at restaurants and cleaning door handles all the time and such like. And it makes reasonable sense to do that, but we don't actually have the proof of how many cases we may catch that way. So we could catch it that way, but it won't be nearly as often as sharing the same air as somebody else that has COVID, whether they have symptoms or not. And so in other words, sharing air when you're inside a bus or a train or a house is where you're most likely to catch it by far.
Right, there we go, Ben. The questions are coming, yeah.
I've had 2 COVID tests a day after a part. Both results were inconclusive. What does that mean? Okay, that's another good question. We have to remember that the test itself misses 20 to 30 out of 100 actual cases. So even if it's a good laboratory, the test misses 20 to 30 out of every 100 actual cases. So it's certainly not, a negative test does not rule it out. A positive test is nearly always true, but a negative test does not rule it out. An inconclusive test can be for a number of reasons. The test that is used, it's called PCR or polymerase chain reaction, it's a fancy name. What it does, essentially, I say, is it's unbelievably sensitive. It detects tiny numbers. So it would detect one, for an analogy, one tennis ball in the whole of Manchester or the whole of a city. Very, very sensitive test. And it's as though you put the tennis ball, if you could, put it onto a photocopier and photocopy that tennis ball or replicate it hundreds of times, and then look to see if you can find a tennis ball. And clearly it's a lot easier to find thousands of tennis balls than it is to find one in Manchester. So, or Zimbabwe or anywhere else. So with that level of photocopying, this is the best way I can describe it. When there's a whole lot of other muck there, so a whole lot of other nasal secretions or a whole lot of other saliva, and there may be food amongst that as well, sometimes it can get a bit confused, the photocopying, and not quite copy right. And so there's times when we have controls on the test and such like. It's really quite a technical test. And sometimes it's just hard to know, is that for real? Are they really tennis balls or are they not? And so that's when you get an inconclusive result. A good question. And it's interesting that you had it twice, but that's the way of the world. It should never actually change anything. You look reasonably young, Sibangeli, your chances of dying if you had it are almost zero or close to zero. And a negative test does not rule out that you do have it. A positive test would mean after you recovered, if you're ill, and I'm not sure if you have been ill at the time, but a positive test would mean, yay, you can't catch it for at least 8 months. And so that would just let you know that maybe you'll be better placed to nurse or care for people that had COVID if you had had a positive test and then got over it. But a negative test never rules it out as a possibility. And Violet says, I was tested positive on COVID. My chest was very heavy, coughing blood. Does it leave any infection? I was tested positive on COVID. Okay. Does it leave any infection? When we clear it, when we get rid of the illness, as I said before, it completely goes. The illness does. But the virus, which may have been hundreds of thousands to millions of virus there, that can take longer to go. It may all be dead, but it takes longer for our immune system to completely clear it. And that may be what happened in Korea, for instance, and some other recent cases. We may sometimes be able to keep tiny little fragments of dead virus still in our lungs for 2, maybe even 3, possibly even 4 months. And so that can also be an inconclusive test too. That is that fragment for real? Is it the last bit of virus fragment left from 4 months ago or not? So, but ultimately, no, it seems on all the current science that we completely get rid of the infection, but the dead virus can stay for quite a lot longer sometimes in a small number of people. Thanks, Violet.
Thank you, Ben, for explaining. Well explained. Yeah, because we don't know this thing. Because now the UK, we are in summer now. We'll be going into is it winter? Soon it'll be winter after summer. So when you go to winter, I've heard the infections might start going up because of the cold.
Right. So you're quite right. So with the waves that are happening at the moment, they are not mutated waves. They're all the same, essentially the same virus, same COVID virus. Influenza mutates 6 times faster. That's why we have the different waves each year of the seasonal influenza. And we have the seasonal influenza in the temperate countries, so nearer the poles, North Pole and South Pole, like Australia and like New Zealand and like United Kingdom. As you say, there's a couple of reasons. One, because it's colder, we know the virus lives longer in the environment, and the humidity lives longer, and we're also closer together. So we socialize inside rather than outside a lot more in the winter. So we're sharing people's air, whether it's influenza or COVID, a lot more in the winter automatically. And so we expect influenza. That's why it goes up in what's called temperate climates. There's semi-cool, cold winter climates. Whereas in the tropics, there is no waves of influenza because the temperature is pretty much the same all year round. And so it doesn't go in waves. So that's from an environmental point of view and a partial human behavior point of view. With something that has fair going with it, like COVID, when the case numbers of COVID go up a whole lot in the summer, people get frightened. If they're not told to keep a bigger distance, they automatically keep a bigger distance because they're frightened of catching it. So that can moderate the waves too, driven by fear. If there's a whole lot of cases in the newspaper of a whole lot of cases or people dying, everyone gets more frightened and automatically have their social distancing more, whether they're instructed to or not by a government.
You've got a question there, Ben, here for you. You can read that.
Okay, for those that are on Avis e Caletra, does that give them a better chance to fight or resist corona? I don't actually know what Avis Caletra is, I'm sorry. The only thing I can think that makes any difference to COVID infection is probably those who have a suppressed immune system can perhaps be 5 or 10% less likely to die, ironically, because unlike the previous influenza pandemic waves, they were primarily, so the 1918 influenza pandemic, the deaths were largely related to, at the same time, getting a bacterial infection from our normal respiratory flora and normal bugs in our upper respiratory tract, and that can be either Staph aureus or a bacteria called Streptococcus pneumoniae. And so now antibiotics will be able to use those, be effective against those. And there's a 1957-58 influenza pandemic as well. those were mainly actual viral infection inflammatory responses. But this COVID virus seems to be primarily a marked inflammatory response that causes the trouble above all else. So rather than just the tissue being infected, it's our immune system response that causes the dramatic trouble. So if either of those drugs suppressed our immune system a bit, dexamethasone or something like that, then that may help not get such a severe infection. I'm sorry I can't be more explanatory than that because I don't know those two terms, Ephraim. Thanks, mate.
No, you're welcome. Yeah. Oh, we've got another one. Oh, we're about to close now. Anyway, there you can go. You can read it, Ben. It's in English.
Okay. BFS. Is it true that the COVID is causing blood clots? I've heard of a few people who collapsed and died without COVID symptoms. So there will always be, it's a good question, there'll always be people that die of blood clots anyway, so that can happen. But any illness and any disease and any infection, there's nearly always some other characteristics associated with that particular illness. So Campylobacter bacteria, gastroenteritis, 1 in 2,000 people that get that go on to get something called Guillain-Barré syndrome, which is a neurological condition in the arms. We generally recover from it, but it can be about 4 or 5 per 100 die. But it's very serious illness. You can be in intensive care unit for a number of months. That's just for Campylobacter. Salmonella, you can get a reactive arthritis from. With something like COVID, we're starting to learn, because there's so many people have it, there will always be a number of other things. We know of taste, of course, and smell, and blood clots is definitely one of the things that is more associated with COVID. It seems to be associated with it as part of an inflammatory response. We can get blood clots. But as I said, before COVID came, people used to get blood clots too. So it's just be aware of that. If there's no symptoms and blood clots, it may be difficult to tell if those blood clots were caused because of COVID, or if they're one of the number of people in the population that would have got blood clots anyway. And if the COVID test was positive, we'd know, oh, that's quite likely was because of COVID. But if the test was negative, it would be less likely to be COVID.
Right. Yeah, well explained, Ben. Well explained. Yeah, I think we're coming close to the end of this show now, and you've done wonders as usual. You're always spot on with your answers, and I think people appreciate the way you're talking with them. You're answering them very well, and if they've got any further questions, I'll just encourage them to come through next week and ask further questions. But like what Casey said, I think we're better off to involve other issues like the STIs and STDs, just to make the people, get more knowledge from this show. Because obviously they will, like what Casey said, they won't know
a little bit.
Yeah, so yeah. So yeah.
Ben, have you got anything to say in conclusion before we close? I wanted you to just mention in short, like how we're discussing something about this SunPure machine that you guys are, because I know Tabith is a nurse, and I just wanted you, like, if you can, just talk about that in brief, maybe 2 to 5 minutes, just so people can be aware that there is this new machine. You've obviously sold it to quite a few other big organizations in New Zealand and Australia.
That's right. It's a machine. Disinfection and hygiene. Thanks, Katina. Disinfection and hygiene is always an ongoing challenge, and this particular machine is very expensive, but it's cutting-edge technology, and it's like a food trolley. You wheel it into, it's a bit space ageist, you wheel it into a room, and it's got 4 stainless steel funnels coming out of it, about a foot long, and you close the door, and it fills the room with steam or steam-like substance. I'll come back on that. for about 10 minutes. It completely fills the room with the steam, and it leaves it in there for about 10 minutes, and then it dehumidifies it and sucks it all back again for 10 minutes. And so by about 40 minutes, it completely sterilizes the whole room. Every square millimeter of the walls, ceilings, electronics, penetrates curtains, carpets, and it uses, it's amazing actually, 2 disinfectants at incredibly low concentrations. 0.88% hydrogen peroxide, and hydrogen peroxide is often used on skin at 4 or 5%. This uses 0.88%, almost 0.9%, plus a chemical called peracetic acid, which is almost the same as vinegar. It's an equilibrium with vinegar, and that's only at 0.18%. Tiny amount. And the 2 together kill every known microbe and every known form of every microbe. And it's used by the United States military for bioterrorism decontamination as well. It's used in hundreds of United States hospitals. Kills everything with total assurance, and it penetrates quite well into soft furnishings and carpets and curtains and such like. So it's expensive, the machine, but in New Zealand dollars, say half that in US dollars, it only costs about $8 per room to do an entire sterilization of it, which is amazing. That's just for the chemical cost. And it leaves, the other major advantage is it leaves no chemical residue at all, because at the end, it dehumidifies it down, breaks it down to carbon dioxide and water, nothing else. And you can walk into the room straight afterwards. I've never seen anything like it in my life before as a microbiologist. It's amazing.
Yeah, I think I think someone wants to buy the machine there, Tabith. Wow, that's great. Yeah, please put details for follow-up. Yeah. How much is it? How much is it, if you don't mind me asking?
It's about, I'm trying to think, it's about 240,000 New Zealand dollars, so about half that in US dollars, which is really expensive. But then you can sterilize 24 rooms in 24 hours for norovirus or COVID or influenza or multi-drug resistant organisms or Ebola or anything else.
Wow. That's really something. Yeah.
What were they using? Yeah.
What's that, Katina?
There's a similar machine that we were using in the DHBs. Is that the?
That's right. There's a similar machine. The similar machine is called a first generation machine, and I think that's used more in Europe. It's called BioQuil, as opposed to this one, which is.
There's another one, Ben, that we were using at ADHB.
That's called BioQuil, and that uses not 0.88% hydrogen peroxide. It uses 35 to 50% hydrogen peroxide.
That's a lot. Yeah.
35 to 50%. It fills the room. You can't have any electronics in the room. It does not have tiny particles. So the Sanipure Ultrapure machine makes particles smaller than most bacteria. It's 0.69 microns, and most bacteria are over 1 micron. So it penetrates wherever a bacteria will go. And the other machine, first generation one, doesn't. And at the end of the process with the first generation machine, you've got a room full of 35 to 50% hydrogen peroxide, and the only way to get rid of it is to open the door and let it float down the corridor. And so if there's staff or patients down there, it's not good. So that whole process takes 4 to 5 hours. It still kills the bugs. The machine costs the same, but it takes 4 to 5 hours to sterilize a room. And the chemical sterilant costs more than the $8 for it. And so so it's technology on the horizon, really. It's amazing. And summing up, I just say also, I think the Americans have a vaccine now. And one of the troubles with it is it's only 50% effective. And we all want something that's 99% effective, especially for those most likely to catch it and die from it, which is the 60, 70, 80, 90-year-olds who've got an underlying health condition. And
yeah. She's asking again, this tablet, she's on it. Is it being used in health facilities, this machine? She's
absolutely. The technology is so new. We're using it in New Zealand and Australia, where we've sold most machines to, is in rest homes, because rest homes are by far the highest mortality rates. And so they've been using it in rest homes in New Zealand and Australia. And hospitals also have been using it for operating theatres. At the end of every day, just utterly sterilise the operating theatre, and it only takes 40 minutes. Yeah, that's the link Katina just put up.
Well, I just found
amazing. It on the home page. When you put on the home page sanipure.co.nz, it's just halfway down the home page, you actually see it fogging away, and it's quite mesmerizing watching it. And it's on a time lapse. It only does it over about a minute. It does the 40-minute time lapse.
Right, yeah, I think I missed something. So I will finish. Sorry, because I came in late. I didn't know what time you were finishing.
That's right. That's right. So now having said that, so that's why I think moving forward, just in case people think maybe I'm cutting you off or something, moving forward, guys, you know that Mark is going to be taking over like these sessions. So get used to seeing Mark on here, because myself, I need to go and make dinner and have some time to spend with my kids. So what Ben likes to do is he likes to have 15 minutes before the program to kind of like talk you through what he's going to talk about. So that's why there's all these catch-up, things that are happening now. And yeah. So in closing, I don't know, Ben, if you want to round off by saying anything else with what's happening.
Like to ask what people would like to know about. So if you can email that into Katina. So
is that the NZIPC?
STD. Sorry, what's that, Katina?
Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
If you can contact Katina or Mark to show, would you like to know STDs, STIs? Some of it is quite graphic pictures, so just to be aware of that. Or I can talk on many, many things. Another one is how did infectious diseases come about and the evolution of microbes. Now, I'm a little bit wary sometimes talking on the evolution of microbes because it comes into human evolution. If there's religious issues with that, I'm not so sure. But talking on the evolution of microbes, how they came about, how infectious diseases came about, and also antibiotic resistance. So I'm not sure if those are the sorts of things that interest people or not. For instance, infectious diseases, we think they've always been here. Measles only started 1,000 years ago, and it came from rinderpest virus, which was similar in effect to HIV, but in cattle. And so it used to wipe out whole cattle herds across Africa and cause famines and civil wars and such like. So things like that are I find them very interesting. And it used to be all these plagues blighted human civilization, and public health with vaccinations and behavior changes. You like that one, do you, Precious? That's right. So I can happily talk on those ones too. So there we are. There's if you email Katina, NZIPC Consultancy, note there's 2 C's there, New Zealand Infection Prevention Control Consultancy, NZIPC Consultancy at Gmail or WhatsApp. And so either just different topics. Would you like to know the microbiome, which is the flora in our gut and how it affects our immune system, our brain function, our behaviors, our IQ, antibiotic resistance, many things, STDs, STIs. Say what you'd like me to talk on, I happily will.
Yeah, I think. Sorry to interrupt. I think that's my suggestion anyway. Because we do this like today, a day before or 2 days before, people would have emailed, would have WhatsApped, would have said something, and then we'll sit down a day before just to finalize which questions we're doing or what we're doing. Because obviously we'll get people, throwing questions, suggestions, and whatever. So it would be ideal for us to just sit down a day before, and then we can discuss way forward, what to include on the program on the following day. So yeah,
those ones, just so you're aware, both of those ones, they are best done with lots of PowerPoint slides, and so people can always and ask questions. But depending on the formatting of how it comes up, I may or may not be able to read the questions. People are very welcome to interrupt as I talk through, but it would be a PowerPoint, still on the same StreamYard, which I think can take PowerPoint, share screen. So I'd be doing it as a PowerPoint presentation because they're very visual. I've got lots and lots of visuals to go with those.
Yep.
And as I said, be warned, STDs, STIs, I've got a number of clinical pictures in there too. So sometimes that can be a little bit challenging just to be aware of.
Those ones, Ben, my thoughts were, I'll check with people here. It's just I already have a topic for tonight, Zimbabwean time, as in tonight, because it's their morning at the moment in Zimbabwe. So we already have a topic. There's something that I'm discussing tonight during that time, but we had planned that we're going to do something tonight, Zimbabwean time, but can we move it to sometime next week? Or if any one of my programs drop during the week, I'll just slot you in, and then we can come and check to see if people are better off engaging with you in the evening, because like right now most people are running up and down, I think, doing stuff during the day. It's morning time in Zimbabwe right now, so I'll check to see what time is ideal, because we haven't tried this in the morning. You have to wake up early, obviously, like I do, to catch the 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. Zim time. If we're gonna be showing some of those pictures that we sometimes share, then I think kids need to be in bed at that time.
I think so, yeah. Otherwise they'll have a distorted view of life.
And also we will have to check with Mark's availability as well. But like I said, Mark, it is very important that you catch up with Ben like prior to, because we take like about 15 to 20 minutes discussing all these things prior to coming into the program. We did. That's why I had to interrupt a few times. But otherwise, well done, guys. Thank you so much. And thank you for those who've joined us. And I'll hand you back over to Mark and Ben now.
Thank you very much, all. Thank you, Mark, and Katina, both hosting. Always a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the questions from the listeners. Always a pleasure to share knowledge. I hope it's been clear enough explanations, and I hope your questions were answered reasonably to the best of my abilities, and I hope you've learned something from it. But Mark, thank you for doing the bulk of the hosting. Much appreciated.
No, you're welcome. I would like to thank Ben for all his effort. He's doing a lot for sharing his knowledge on this platform. And for Casey, I would like to thank you as well for bringing up creating this page and making people get information from a platform. It's really informative, educative, and appreciated. So well done, Casey. Well done, Ben, and thanks for having me. I'm enjoying this, and I can't wait for next week.
Next week you're gonna be on your own with Ben. I'm not coming here. So
no problem.
You look after him, Ben. He's gonna send you to China.
I know. The next one may be from China. If Mark,
I'm really worried, Mark. I'm worried. I'm really, really concerned. I might not find my Ben. I might end up running the business by myself. Yet he's the man that sits on my shoulder, giving me all the information that I share out there.
No, China will be 2021. I'm sending him in 2021. So
that is if he makes it to 2021.
One other thing to be aware of, at some stage I'll be up in Auckland again, probably at short notice. So it'll
Ben,
be...
yeah. Ben will live, Ben will live 200 years. I'm telling you.
That's right.
Ben, do you want to tell them your secret, or is it for next time? Your secret? Why are you going to live longer? You think you're going to live longer?
Yes,
you think you're more better than Jesus?
It's why so many people in Africa may well not have COVID virus already. So I'm learning something from the Africans, which is...
I'm sorry, guys. I'm eating. The program has ended. I can eat. Yeah.
Yeah. Next time. I don't want to put you off your dinner.
No, you can talk about it. I know what it is. I already know.
It'll be next time. It'll be next time. Or another time. I'd say.
Yeah, next time. Yeah.
For a living creature that lives inside his body, and he believes it's gonna protect him to live longer. So let's leave it at that.
I know what it is.
Thank you so much, Tabet. Thank you. We have these programs like every Tuesday. Hey, Ben, did you see the part where somebody suggested you talk about cancer next time? Is that something that you can talk about?
I can talk on many things, but I'm not sure. That would maybe tie in with the microbiome to a certain extent.
Yeah, microbiome, is that the one that will link us to the overuse of antibiotics as well?
Part of it, yes, it is. But cancer, I mean, there's many different types of cancer. Probably half of them are environmental, in other words, our lifestyle, including, dare I say it, and the STD talk, human papillomavirus, so cervical cancer is a viral infection. Yep, there's smoking cancers, or there are many things of cancer. I'm absolutely no cancer expert, but I know various things about it.
Okay, all right. I'll put out a post for people to choose what they want to talk about. I'll just put out like a questionnaire, like to say A, B, C, and people can like more like like a survey, and then people can pick what they want to talk about next Tuesday. How's that?
Sounds good.
You give me like maybe 4 choices, and people can tick, and then I'll tell you by end of the week what they want to talk about.
Okay.
As long as I'm not the one presenting, I'm doing enough already. 8 hours today, just.
Do you want me to do one on hand hygiene?
No, you can't talk on that one. I won't let you.
I know that.
I won't let you. Yeah, but hey, thank you so much, guys, for joining us. We're just gonna go in the backstage now, and God bless you guys. Ben is gonna pray for us.
I am, but it'll be a silent prayer.
I'm not telling them. These scientists, bloody scientists. No, we love you.